Surprise, rankings are still fake, and I can't say everything that I really want to say, but I can say, oh, you did the same thing, so Student Country needs to pipe down a bit. You're not any better on the field, off the field, or in the locker room. Thankfully, though, we'll all have the opportunity to prove it on the field this season.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. We get to slide right into this Bedlam conversation. Who will have a better season coming up, whether it be OU or OSU? There's a lot of variables, obviously, that are going to go into this, and CBS recently did an article basically talking about how Mike Gundy and Brent Venables are both looking to hit this reset button and have a massive season after both had sub 500 seasons. OU's had a couple under the Venables era, which is obviously not a comforting place for them. Oklahoma State had their first since Mike Gundy's first year as Oklahoma State head coach, which is obviously a cause for concern. But at the end of the day, we will have the opportunity, both of us, to prove on the field at the end of the season who has more wins and what it all amounts to at the end of the year. I do firmly believe that John Mateer is one of the best quarterbacks in all of America, no doubt. But I also firmly believe that from a scheduling perspective, Oklahoma State likely has a better path to success in this upcoming season. OU begins the season against Illinois State. That's a penciled in, marked down. We could play our four stringers W. Then they take on Michigan in Norman. That'll be a pretty fun one. Then they go to Temple. They could take their third string and win that game. Then they have Auburn coming into Norman, Oklahoma, followed by Kent State coming into Norman. Then the Red River rivalry at South Carolina. Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, at Bama, Mizzou, and LSU at home. They have 3 built-in guaranteed wins in Illinois State, Temple, and Kent State. That's one stop. Oklahoma State begins the season with UT Martin and Stillwater, followed by a trip to Eugene, Oregon. Then we get Tulsa at home. UT Martin, Tulsa should be guaranteed wins that we could bring our backups and accomplish the mission. Then it gets a little trickier. We have Baylor at home, on the road to Arizona, Houston at home, Cincinnati at home, on the road to Lubbock, then on the road again to Lawrence, Kansas, Kansas State at home, at the Bounce House in Orlando, Florida, followed by Iowa State at home. Whenever you collectively look at these schedules, both of them having 7 home games is naturally going to be beneficial. The Big 12, top to bottom, is definitely more difficult, but OU's schedule is pretty wild. So even though I do believe that John Mateer is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he's definitely good enough to make things interesting for OU, I do think ultimately the schedule does favor us a little bit more, even though they do have those 3 built-in third-string guaranteed wins. Michigan's going to be difficult. I think Auburn's going to have an improved season. Red River rivalry likely would favor Texas this particular season, although we've seen those go either way, regardless of which team is clearly the best. At South Carolina, I know Janoris Sellers he's a legit individual. He's a good player. I don't know that the rest of the roster is going to help prop him up enough. Ole Miss is likely to be good again, as is Tennessee, as is Bama. Mizzou's probably a W, and then they end the season at LSU, with LSU at home, sorry. So I think the difficulty of the schedule almost evens out to some degree. We should be able to win at Arizona. We should be able to beat Houston. We should be able to beat Cincinnati, especially since both of those are at home and Cincinnati's homecoming. On the road at Tech and on the road at KU, that's a crapshoot. Kansas State at home, being at home is beneficial. And if you look back historically, O State versus K-State, it's always a pretty close battle, much like the Red River, regardless of who's better. So that'll be a fun one. We have some redemption at UCF for the Bounce House, followed by Iowa State at home, who should be a contender for the Big 12. we cannot really make a distinguishment on who are the contenders on our schedule just because the Big 12 is absolutely crazy. However, whenever you look at the SEC, it is a little bit easier to navigate that road to the championship level in the SEC. LSU, Bama, Tennessee, they should all be in that mix. They should all be in that conversation, as should Michigan as it pertains over to the Big Ten. At the end of the day, we're going to be able to compare records, and they have those built-in W's. Now, I will say that traditional SEC fluffy stuff game, it's a little bit earlier for OU than I would imagine most of their counterparts in the SEC. So that's a little bit interesting. Obviously, injury is going to be a component to this conversation, depth, the whole 9 yards. I think Oklahoma State absolutely has gotten much more faster, whatever, athletically speaking. And OU's got a very good defensive line. But at the end of the day, the 7 home games for Oklahoma State, 7 home games for OU, they do have the 3 penciled in guaranteed W's. So there is a possibility that we're having a very comparable conversation at the end of the season about the record. Thankfully, we do get the opportunity to prove it. I think you can legitimately make the argument, however, that there is a differentiation between the bottom half of the SEC and the bottom half of the Big 12. So I think at the end of the day, that will be realistically what showcases the difference between these two ball clubs. We may not have Bedlam on the field in football, which is an absolute travesty. It's extremely unfortunate for both universities, realistically, in my opinion. However, we will have a little bit of a bragging rights conversation at the end of the year. If you notice, last year, thankfully, OU didn't have a great season other than that massive upset W over Alabama. But outside of that, we didn't really hear a lot from OU fans. Now, we're hearing a lot more from them today, which is kind of ironic because, they've done some comparable, questionable things. Anybody who let me know down for you guys out here in YouTube country in the comment section, who do you think is going to have a better record? I think Oklahoma State, OU, it should be close. It very well could be that Oklahoma State ends up with more opportunities because of some of the disparity in the Big 12. But let me know down in the comment section, what are your thoughts? Who's going to have a better season and why? Is it go beyond the schedule? Because, we don't have the same level of quarterback penciled in that we know is going to be able to slide. I think John Mateer is a dude, right? I think he is going to be very reminiscent of some of the older quarterbacks that have gone to OU. But at the same point in time, I do not think you can discount what Zane Flores could end up looking like. And the speed of Haas Haney, it's still there. So I'm excited to see what this season comes for both of us. And as much shade as I love to throw OU's way, and we're not done throwing some shade at OU's way, I still firmly believe that both Texas and OU being successful in the SEC is better for the Big 12. If Texas would be as down as OU has been, the last couple seasons, then there would be a national conversation about how, the teams that came from the Big 12 to the SEC were clearly not ready, and the Big 12 is not very good, this and that and the other. Obviously, Texas has kind of squashed that argument because they were pretty bad in the Big 12 for the majority of their last 15 years in the conference. Therefore, them coming into the SEC and immediately being successful is a bit of a surprise. If they couldn't be very successful in the Big 12 recently, yet they go immediately to the SEC and are substantially better, I think that's good for the Big 12. Likewise, if OU is able to make a run or OU is able to maintain themselves at the upper half of the SEC, I do think that once again strengthens the argument, at least to some degree, about the Big 12 in the positive direction. The positive direction is meaningful, just like it is meaningful to have these rankings and things be as close to accurate as physically possible because there's hidden components. But surprise, it's still a propaganda show. What is not a propaganda show is your opportunities with FanDuel today. The summer months are here, which means we get a new collection of sports. We get baseball rocking into the 9th inning. We get golf out there chipping in for par. We get high stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting for you. You're already going to be following the action, so why not make it worth your while? Make it more enticing, make it more thrilling. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game with your friends, or you can get in on the game while your friends are out there doing ridiculousness. It is super easy to use. It has very fast payouts, makes it even a regular season event. It's kind of like a must watch. Whether you're going to place a same game parlay or you're going to watch the bet ride all the way through the ninth, FanDuel makes it feel like you're legitimately part of the action. So get in on the betting action today. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. Now we get to jump into the conversation of rankings. McLean put out a deal recently in regards to the new 247 rankings. And of course, there's going to be new windows for a multitude of things. However, surprise, surprise, almost every single player that's decided to commit to Oklahoma State has been downgraded. Go figure that one. They put out this quote. This ranking update was approached as a tweak and not a complete overhaul, said Andrew Ivins, director of scouting for 247. It comes following the completion of key summer events like Elite 11, OT 7, Texas 7-on-7, and a few under the Under Armour regional showcase and college camps around the country. We will have a major rankings update for the class of 2026 in November, and we will actively be updating the grades once all the important senior season get underway and in early August. The focus of this update was positioning the quarterbacks as we saw a majority of them throw at some point in time over the last couple months. I do think that is somewhat telling. But of course, 4-star defensive lineman Danny Beal was downgraded from the 115th ranked player in all of America to 121st. We know that Taj Overton was downgraded. He was the number one ranked player in the state of Oklahoma forever and a day, but because he didn't pick OU, he magically got downgraded a little bit. Same could be said with Danny Beal. Because he didn't decide to go to an LSU or an Oregon, well, that automatically means he needs to get bumped down a little bit, right? Some of the justifications for it are astronomically ridiculous. How about KD Batman Jones? He was a 4-star dude whenever he was a heavy OU lean. Comes to Oklahoma State, and they're like, nah, not really. How about Braden Presley? Braden Presley was very highly regarded. Another individual that was classified as a 4-star. He picks Oklahoma State. Nah, you're not a 4-star. Landon Anderson was a 4-star whenever he verbally committed to KU. And, you know, he decided to decommit from KU. And they were like, oh, you're not going to Kansas? Ha, downgrade. Number one linebacker in the state of Oklahoma, Trey McLaughlin. Is he going to remain there? Is he going to stay there? Who knows? We'll see at the end of the season. How about Landon Bland coming out of Kansas, or Aiden Martin coming out of Berry Hill? Case Evans may have got a little bit of love and may have gotten a little bit of an upgrade. I bring all this up, right? There's a Bedlam tie-in here because, of course, Oklahoma State is absolutely demolishing the Sooners when it comes to in-state recruiting. We're hearing these guys aren't good enough. They're not SEC ready. We didn't even try to get these, which is blatantly false. The same amount of money that was offered to KD Batman Jones from Oklahoma State was the same as OU. So if that's the case, then likely Taj Overton would be the same. Oklahoma State is not spending way more money than OU, right? But they like to pretend that is precisely what's happening. We're just spending more money than them. No, we just out-recruited you. And to deal with it, what you're hearing out of OU country is continuously this, well, we didn't want them. We don't need them. Look at the rankings. Look at the numbers. Look at the recruiting. Look at the sites. Look at the services. But we've done this song and dance before. When Jalen Beckley was committed to Clemson, he was a 4-star. He decommits from Clemson. They drop a star. Michael Riles, same thing. When he was a heavy Texas A&M lean, he was a 4-star. When he decides he's going to go to Oklahoma State, he's no longer a 4-star. and this is not just Oklahoma State, right? This is pretty synonymous across most of the Big 12. We've had several conversations with other hosts from other shows within the conference, and it's pretty normal. Even in the transfer portal, this was happening as well. Players that would leave Big 12 schools and go to an SEC school, they got upgrades. Why? Well, just because they got out of the Big 12. And the ACC, to some degree, goes through something somewhat similar. Are they going to disrespect Florida State and Clemson? No, they're not. But every other school in the ACC is not going to get afforded the same bumps and the same manipulations. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, what does it matter? It doesn't matter. Who cares what the overall ranking is if we know there's going to be manipulation built in? Why it matters, and I tell people to revert back to a show, just a handful of months ago that Drake Toll did, Locked on Big 12, when he was discussing how there's, evidentiary metrics that prove that some of these analytics and statistics and rankings, they're factored into other rankings, right? So it's always going to be a manipulation, propaganda driven business. It is what it is. I guarantee you, if the number one ranked player in America decided to come to Oklahoma State or Houston or Baylor, they would be downgraded. I mean, what? That actually just happened. Houston's 5-star All-American quarterback was downgraded. Why? Probably because he decided to go to Houston. Is it a big discrepancy? Maybe not. But the reason that I find this important to discuss is because it's very obvious. And they don't exactly hide it either, that there are components of these rankings that get factored into other rankings at the end of the season or as the season progresses. Should it be that way? No, it shouldn't. But it's just like the NCAA. At one point in time, they were probably a phenomenal entity, and they probably did follow the letter of the law and make sure the universities were doing things they were supposed to, and they weren't trying to skirt around the rules. But then somebody's palms got greased, and they started going after the schools that would raise a little bit of the alert volume, but not schools that would jeopardize anybody in the NCAA from potentially making some extra coin on the side. This new third-party governing body, it might be better until when, though, right? Until the corruption naturally finds a way to sink in. Some of this seems fairly inevitable, but, Oklahoma State fans do get some grief, and a lot of big fan bases across the Big 12 get grief when we talk about, obviously the ranking is somewhat insignificant. Yes, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's cool for marketability and exposure when you do have a quote unquote top 25 class. Yeah, it's cool. As Oklahoma State did not too long ago. And then you get the best players in the state and some of the best players across the country, the number one player in the state of Arkansas. And people get downgraded. And I've had conversations with some of the dudes, and they don't really care. They don't really care if they come in as a 4-star, 3-star consensus. At the end of the day, that's a little insignificant. As long as the opportunity is there, the NIL collective has the ability to make things make sense from a financial compensation perspective, it's all a wash, right? So physically on the field doesn't matter. But perception is something the Big 12 is trying to fix. And this is, once again, another indication that there are powers that be that do continuously, purposely, and somewhat fictitiously keep propping up the SEC. Is it because somebody's palms are getting greased once again? It's very possible. If people can get to the NCAA, then they're going to be able to get to the 247 analyst. And then another thing that makes this somewhat convoluted anyways is we know some of these individuals that have spent most of their careers doing the scouting evaluations from primarily a high school perspective, they've had to shift over the last few years to start covering more of the transfer portal stuff because it does equal more engagement. It does equal to some degree better content because you're being able to talk about some of these blue blood transfers. But if a blue blood transfer comes from a Tennessee or Ohio State or LSU to Oklahoma State or Kansas State, they're going to be downgraded, and it's purposeful. And the reason we bring it to light is not to be like, oh, this is a complaint session. It's just to make people aware, right? There is a component to this that is worth talking about the ridiculousness of. There's always going to be a propping up of the other conferences unless some of this stuff gets fixed. Like, why would the recruiting services not wake up one day and decide, you know what, actually, we need to operate with some semblance of integrity and do the ranking system based off of physical attributes and statistics, as opposed to who they're getting looked at and who they're getting offers from and where they could potentially land. And if they have 4 or 3 SEC schools, 1 Big 10 school, and a Big 12 school in their top 5, and they go to the Big 12 school, inevitably they will be downgraded. So it's not necessarily a complaint session. It just is what it is. And with all of the moving and shaking happening in college football, there was a little bit of hope that somebody would stop this Mickey Mouse bull honky just to help with the propping up of others. But apparently, some things will never change, and this seemingly is obviously one of them. Speaking of change, I wish some things would change at Oklahoma State at the moment. These TikTok dances are just such a feminine, estrogen-induced. I can't say. Yeah, see, I'm trying to keep it. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. I just call a spade a spade. The only people who think this is cool to be doing these feminine air humping at other dudes TikTok dances in locker rooms are chicks, young dudes who may have drank too much soy milk in their time, and OU country, I guess, because around this time last year, the whole country was able to make fun of OU for their ridiculous TikTok videos that they're making in the locker room. And it's funny because Oklahoma State country and a lot of other fan bases across the country were virally talking about how OU is going to have a bad season. There's nobody that's going to be scared to play those dudes this season, including us. It was fun. It was awesome. We had a great time with it. And in part of that, one of the biggest conversations was why would they post that? Like, who allowed that to be posted? And furthermore, how could somebody look at that and say, you know what, this is it. This is the one. This is a great idea. Well, we have the same problem now at Oklahoma State. These TikTok dance videos, yes, we've been viral for the last 24 hours because of this. And of course, a couple people have been like, well, it's better than the DUI thing. Okay, is it? Is it though? I mean, football, it's supposed to be a physical, violent, testosterone-inducing sport. There's nothing but a bunch of estrogen being passed around in that locker room or the bathroom where all of these TikTok dances are happening. There's some things that I think they should allow the players to do, especially at a younger age. And we've been able to kind of, shift some of that. Like having some freshmen be available for, interviews and things of that nature. So we've adjusted some of that. And I think that's important. But my Gundy, come on, man. Somebody tell somebody to stay off of TikTok. Rich Rod at West Virginia actually had it right. He banned TikTok from the locker room. And you know what? There was some people that were like, oh, he just needs to get with the times. Well, after seeing the not just once, we didn't do it just once. We did it once and we got slammed for it. And it was a viral type of situation. And then we did it again with more players. I've seen publications talk about it. Obviously, it's all over social media once again. I've seen other shows that JB dude, he goes too far, absolutely too far, especially from a vulgarity perspective. And he definitely says some things I disagree with. But the overall point is, you look weak. There's nobody in the country is going to watch all this TikTok air humping and whatever estrogen dancing and say, oh, Oklahoma State's going to be hard to play this year. Wow, it's going to be difficult to walk into Stillwater this year. Again, I'm not saying that this has anything to do with how the season is going to go. However, I am saying we just had the Ollie Gordon DUI stuff, followed by the Mike Gundy, I've done it 1,000 times stuff. And that was a PR difficulty, not a disaster. This looks like an embarrassing, utterly embarrassing disaster. Who approved this? And furthermore, just like the OU stuff, how does somebody do that, look at it and say, yeah, that looks awesome. We look cool. We look like genuine football players. No, we look like a bunch of tap dancing dudes that are getting prepared to have a pillow fight in a bathroom. Like this just, it doesn't scream intensity and physicality and toughness is currently permeating the locker rooms of Stillwater America right now. We're not necessarily going to make a mountain out of a molehill with the deal, but it's dumb. It's a bad look. And after a 3-win season, we have way more important things to be worrying about than jumping on TikTok to do a bunch of dances. I don't know. Why don't we do the playbook and learn it a little bit better? I don't know. Why don't we run the stadium a couple more extra times, get in better shape, work on our nutrition a little bit more, get in the film room a little bit more. There's so many things that we could be doing instead of this. We're consuming our time doing this. And somebody either approved it or said it was okay, or the players looked at that and said, yeah, we look legit. We look tough. We look awesome. I mean, yeah, my 10-year-old daughter thought it was kind of cool, but she's my 10-year-old daughter. So doing that stuff, and it might be cool. It is cool to a 10-year-old girl. So what does the Oklahoma State football players do? Are they trying to market this stuff to like preteens? I don't get it. I don't get how anybody thought that this would be a good idea. This is going to be a good representation for Oklahoma State. Surely we're not going to catch the heat for this. Bunch of vegan eating ridiculousness is what it is. I think it's a bad look for Oklahoma State. Whatever. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here. Locked on Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast with people out there. You are everything that makes this work. I greatly appreciate everything that you do. So go do what you do. Hit the stars and leave some reviews. All right, y'all. Later, taters.